Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something that is quite literally a profound survival guide for the human condition. Seriously, it's read by millions of people every single week. We're talking about Surah Al Kahf, the 18th chapter of the Qur'an. Now, it's often just called the Cave, and this Makki surah is incredibly revered. It's famous for containing four major, deeply interconnected narratives, and as we'll see today, these aren't just your standard historical accounts. No, they are timeless parables, and they're designed to help us navigate the absolute toughest trials of existence. To really wrap our heads around the significance of this chapter, we have to look at the incredibly high stakes and the deep reverence surrounding it in Islamic tradition. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, highlighted its immense protective power. He actually stated that anyone who memorizes its first 10 verses will be secure against the Dajjal. On top of that, there's a widely practiced tradition where Muslims recite this specific surah every single Friday. And why is that? Well, it's believed that doing so brings this divine light to the reader that lasts all the way until the following Friday. It acts as a sort of weekly spiritual anchor for believers. Okay, let's dive right into this. We're going to cover four distinct parables: the trial of faith, the trial of wealth, the trial of knowledge, and finally, the trial of power. It's a fascinating escalation, really. We're starting from a deeply personal internal struggle for survival and scaling all the way up to absolute earthly power. So, starting with the trial of faith and the story of the people of the cave. This is the incredible account of a group of persecuted youths who made the gut-wrenching decision to flee their homes. They sought refuge in a cave rather than compromise their deeply held belief in one Allah. Now, what's really amazing about this is how Allah responded to their unwavering faith. He granted them this miraculous sleep. And we're not talking about a long nap here. They slept in that secluded cave for exactly 309 years. Can you imagine? But here's the crazy part. When they finally woke up, their perception of time was so completely unaltered that they felt like they'd only been asleep for a day, or maybe even just part of a day. The text gives us these absolutely fascinating physical details about how they were preserved during this centuries-long sleep. To protect them from the harsh elements, the sun would actually incline away from their cave as it rose and pass away when it set. And even more remarkably, their bodies were continuously turned from right to left just to prevent any physical decay. It's wild. This whole story stands as the ultimate testament to resilience under extreme pressure. It proves Allah's absolute ability to protect those who trust in Him and serves as a very tangible demonstration of the reality of the resurrection. Moving right along to our second narrative, the trial of wealth, featuring the man with two gardens. Here, the focus shifts completely. We go from the persecution of faith to the deep, seductive temptations of worldly prosperity. So picture this. This man had been granted these magnificent, lush gardens completely overflowing with fruit and rivers. Literally everything a person could possibly desire. But instead of showing gratitude for these massive blessings, he fell straight into the trap of arrogance. He boasts to his companion, completely convinced of his own invincibility, basically saying he doesn't think this will ever perish. He just goes on and on, declaring his superiority in wealth and children. But then, you have his companion, who tries to offer some humble, grounding advice. He reminds the arrogant man that all of this, the whole shebang, is by Allah's will. He advises him to simply say, "What Allah has willed, there is no power except with Allah," whenever he walked into his magnificent gardens. Tragically, though, the wealthy man completely ignored that wisdom, and his hubris led directly to his downfall. In the end, Allah completely destroyed those beautiful gardens. And this destruction wasn't just some random bad luck. It was a direct consequence of his ingratitude, his unchecked pride, and his disbelief in the hereafter. This parable masterfully illustrates that material wealth is really just a transient test. True success isn't about how much stuff you accumulate. It demands the humility to recognize that all of our blessings are ultimately gifts from Allah, and they require our constant, ongoing gratitude. Now, let's look at the third trial, the trial of knowledge, featuring Musa and Al-Khidr. Here, the great prophet Musa, confidently believing he was the most learned, is sent on a journey to learn from another servant named Al-Khidr, specifically to test the very limits of his human understanding. Let's see how this builds, because during their journey together, Al-Khidr performs three seemingly inexplicable, honestly shocking acts that severely test Musa's patience. First, he deliberately damages a perfectly good boat that belonged to poor fishermen. Second, and this is the most shocking one, he actually takes the life of a young boy. And third, after they enter this hostile town where the people rudely refuse to give them any food or hospitality, Al-Khidr goes entirely out of his way to repair a collapsing wall in that very same town, for free. With every single step, Musa is just struggling to understand the logic behind any of it. Eventually, thankfully, Al-Khidr resolves the mystery for Musa. He reveals the profound, unseen wisdom behind every single one of those acts. He damaged the boat. That was to save it from a tyrant king who was forcefully seizing all the good ships. He took the life of the boy. That was because the boy's future would have led his righteous parents into devastating disbelief, and Allah intended to replace him with a better, more righteous child. And as for repairing that wall, he did that to guard a hidden treasure buried underneath it, which rightfully belonged to 2 orphaned children living in that hostile town. The takeaway here is absolutely clear. Our human understanding is strictly limited to what we can see right now, in the present moment. Absolute knowledge of the unseen and the ultimate consequences of all actions, well, that belongs entirely to Allah. And that brings us to our final and definitely largest scale trial, the trial of power, focusing on the story of Dhul-Qarnayn. This explores the life of a highly righteous king who traveled the earth establishing justice and order. On one of his incredible journeys, he reaches this vulnerable place situated between 2 mountains. And here, he encounters a community being absolutely terrorized by these destructive tribes known as Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Desperate, the people plead with Dhul-Qarnayn for protection, even offering to pay him a handsome tribute for his help. But listen to his response. He outright refuses their earthly tribute. He tells them that the reward from Allah is far better for him. So instead of exploiting their desperation, he simply agrees to help them. Together, they build this massive, impenetrable barrier between the community and those destructive tribes. It was a monumental achievement in architecture and protection. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what true, grounded leadership looks like. Despite engineering this massive, historical achievement, Dhul-Qarnayn never once succumbed to pride. He didn't carve his name into the wall. He didn't demand to be worshipped. Instead, he attributed his success entirely to divine mercy. He openly acknowledged that his massive authority and even this giant, indestructible wall were strictly temporary trusts from Allah. He actually proclaimed that when the promise of his Lord comes to pass, Allah will make that very wall level with the ground. He knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that ultimate power and judgment belongs solely to Allah. So what does this all mean when we put the pieces together? Let's synthesize these 4 trials: faith, wealth, knowledge, and power. We see a really clear pattern here. The people of the cave taught us resilience when our faith is under fire. The man with the 2 gardens served as a stark warning against arrogance and a call for gratitude when we're tested with wealth. Musa and Al-Khidr proved the absolute necessity for deep humility regarding the limits of our own wisdom. And finally, Dhul-Qarnayn demonstrated that navigating the trial of power requires just leadership and total reliance on Allah. The crucial point is that success in every single one of these domains requires us to submit to a higher power with profound humility. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to remember that these aren't just ancient parables. They apply directly to the modern lives we're living every single day. Whether it's the pressure to compromise your beliefs, the strong temptation of material wealth, the sheer arrogance of thinking you know it all, or the massive responsibility that comes with having authority over others, we are all navigating these exact same trials. So, as you reflect on the incredible wisdom found in Surah Al Kahf, ask yourself, which of these 4 trials is your greatest test today? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep seeking knowledge.